Hello, Thomas Elementary School. My name is Marisol Baca, and here are 3 things about me before I get started that you're going to want to know. Number 1, I'm a former Thomas Elementary School student. I went to school in 3rd grade at Thomas Elementary, and I had a really great teacher, Mrs. Taves, and I loved being a student there. Number 2, my sister is Ms. Baca or Mrs. Baca, and she teaches at Thomas Elementary. So that's number 2. Number 3, I'm a poet. I'm a writer. And I am the former Fresno Poet Laureate, which basically means that I wrote poetry and talked about poetry and taught people about poetry and why it's important and why people write it. And I love talking about poetry. So I was the former poet laureate for Fresno. Those are 3 things about me, and I want to tell you a little bit more about what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to read you a poem from my book. Yes, I have a book. I'm poet laureate, and I have a book. And this is my book. It's titled Tremor, and a tremor is like an earthquake. It's when something shakes, and it's a book of poetry. On the cover, you can see a moth here, and then this big, beautiful plant that's a painting of a plant, the leaves and the petals of the plant. And it's a yucca plant up close. And this is a yucca moth. And there's my name. So this is my book, Tremor, and I have a poem in this book, but in order to tell you a little bit more about myself and to talk a little bit about Latino Heritage Month, about our roots, we're from New Mexico. My family is from New Mexico originally. And we're from a really small little tiny part of New Mexico, which is another state, but it's pretty close to California. And if you don't know where it is, have your teacher show you where it is. But New Mexico, all our entire family is from this little small town, little area in New Mexico called Corrales and Alameda. And my grandfather bought our house, built our house. He didn't buy our house. He built a house. And my parents and my grandparents lived in that house. And everybody is pretty much from that area. There's a couple of things that you want to know about New Mexico, and you probably have heard about it if you know anybody from New Mexico. And that is, number 1, we really love our chili. We love chili peppers. We love to eat chili, and we have special chili that's usually grown in different parts of New Mexico that are green or red chilies, and they're just New Mexico chilies, and they're really, really flavorful. They're not super hot all the time, but they're really, really flavorful. And we put them in enchiladas. We make them in a number of different dishes that we usually use. Pozole is another one. So we also bake bread, and we have done so for thousands of years in New Mexico. The way that we bake bread is in a special type of oven. And that oven is called an horno. And this is what it looks like. See, here's a picture from a magazine from New Mexico that my dad gave me. And here's the word horno. Horno means oven in Spanish. So if you know Spanish, you know the word oven is horno. And these hornos, you usually can bake bread and all sorts of different things in. My dad built one for us when we were really little in our backyard. And I have a little bit of a poem, or a part of a poem, that I'd like to read to you. And it's titled The Horno. So now you know a few things about me. My name is Marisol Baca. I went to Thomas Elementary School. My sister's Kimberly Baca, or Mrs. Baca. And I'm a poet. And so I write poems. And this poem is about the horno that my dad built. So I hope you enjoy it. The crib is now much too small for me. Horno in the rain is deep red. I rub my hand over its surface, and it bleeds purple like blackberries. Inside of the horno, with frozen peas in my mouth, I watch Dad shaping the final bricks. The sun has changed him to a horse. No undershirt, black hair, and long and black like Jesus's in photos. Trout in lakes and rivers, the smoke in wisps along the road. Long trails of feathers beside the fields, lakes, and rivers, the trout inside the rivers. Dad buys ducks in the winter. Mom tells stories to Grandpa. I follow the ducks into the furnace and fall asleep. Snow-covered, it becomes a hilly shadow, stretched at noon, gloomy and long. Clouds, the same color as the inside of that thing. Smoke paints the walls in ash, feathers left over and over from the ducks. They disappeared after months. I didn't cry when they were gone. He used to smoke trout in it. My father, Magdalena, I am praying to you. I have fallen asleep inside the old horno again. So this is a poem about watching my dad, who when I was little, watching my dad making this oven. And it looked a lot like this oven right here, made out of clay and hay and straw and dirt. That's how they used to make them. And then after that, there was this big oven. And when it wasn't being used and I was really little, I used to crawl into it or walk into it when my mom was in the backyard, and I'd sit inside of it. So you can say that I sat inside of an oven, which is kind of not something that people usually do. Anyway, so that's part of my history, and we don't have an horno here, but we are thinking of building one in my backyard. So that's a little bit about me. It's nice to meet you guys. Hopefully I can see you in person someday. Have a really wonderful day and write some poetry. All right, bye-bye.